In the small, often overlooked town of Elmsfield, Maryland, my life was a blend of the mundane and academic. 2 years ago, at 22, I found myself navigating the complexities of adulthood, balancing a rigorous college schedule with the demands of a part-time job. The job, while not glamorous, offered a unique solace. As a pizza delivery driver working the night shift, I cherished the solitude and the silent companionship of the empty streets. Little did I know, one particular delivery would etch itself into my memory, transforming the quiet town into a tableau of unresolved mysteries and unspoken fears. It began on a night cloaked in the crisp embrace of fall. The air was tinged with the promise of winter, carrying with it the remnants of leaves and lost time. The order came through just past midnight, an hour when the world seemed to hold its breath. The address was unfamiliar, located on the fringes of Elmsfield, where civilization gave way to shadows and the untamed whispers of nature. The instructions were odd but not alarming: leave the pizza at the door. Do not knock. Do not ring the bell. Intrigued and slightly amused, I set out, the warmth of the pizza bag a comforting presence against the growing chill. The drive to the outskirts was a descent into an increasingly foreign landscape. Streetlights became scarce, their glow swallowed by the encroaching fog. The houses thinned out, replaced by dense woods that seemed to watch with unseen eyes. As the GPS signal wavered, a sense of isolation crept in, wrapping its cold fingers around my heart. Eventually, the paved road gave way to gravel, leading to a house that time had forgotten. It stood alone, a relic of despair, its windows dark and soulless. The air felt thicker here, charged with an unseen energy that whispered of secrets and sorrows. With a tentative step, I approached the door, the pizza box an inadequate shield against the building dread. As I placed the order on the doorstep, a shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. Glancing up, I caught sight of a figure watching from a window. Its presence was palpable, a weight on my chest that stole my breath. Panic surged as the figure vanished, leaving me to question whether it had been there at all. I fled back to my car, the echoes of my footsteps a frantic rhythm in the night. The drive back was a blur, my mind reeling from the encounter. Sleep was elusive that night, the image of the shadowed figure haunting the edges of my dreams. The following day, driven by a mix of fear and fascination, I began to investigate. The local library held little more than whispers of the house on Elmsfield Road. It was as if the structure existed in a realm beyond the tangible, its history a patchwork of tragedy and unexplained phenomena. Conversations with locals were equally fruitless, their words tinged with caution and an underlying current of fear. The house, it seemed, was a chapter of Elmsfield's history that many wished to forget. Compelled by an inexorable pull, I returned to the house by day. In the light, the malevolence seemed diminished, but the air still hummed with a quiet tension. A sudden chill wrapped around me, a silent reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be closed. In the weeks that followed, I wrestled with the shadows of that night. The delivery had changed something, a shift in the way I perceived the world around me. No longer could I traverse the night with ease, for now, I knew of the eyes that watched from the darkness. The decision to leave my job was bittersweet. While I yearned for the return of normalcy, I knew the shadows of Elmsfield Road would forever linger in the periphery of my mind, a haunting melody of unresolved mysteries and unseen watchers. Living in Amherst, right on the edge of the Buffalo area, you'd think life would be pretty straightforward, predictable, even. My name's Tyler, and I found out the hard way that it's anything but. I was 24, fresh out of college with a degree that felt more decorative than useful, and driving for Quick Deliver wasn't the dream job I'd imagined while sitting in lecture halls, but it paid the bills. That's all I needed, until one delivery changed everything I thought I knew about my hometown. It was late October, and the chill in the air had just started to bite, turning breaths into mist and making every shadow seem a little darker, every wind whisper a little more ominous. Deliveries were back to back that night, a mix of late work hours and the seasonal rush for warm food. Then, an order popped up on my app, sending me to a house on the outskirts of town I'd never heard of. The instructions were simple: leave it on the porch, ring the bell, and leave. Don't wait around. Driving to the location, I couldn't shake off a growing unease. The streets became less familiar, houses more sparse, and the towering trees seemed to lean in closer as if to watch my car pass by. When I finally arrived, the house in question was unlike any I'd seen in Amherst. It looked old, not the charming kind of vintage but neglected, like it was holding on to too many secrets. Its windows were dark, and the yard was overgrown, with the wind sending dead leaves in a frenzied dance around my feet as I approached. After setting the food down and ringing the bell, I couldn't resist the urge to glance back. That's when I saw it, a face in the window. Not just any face, but one so pale and gaunt it seemed more ghost than human. It vanished before I could get a better look, leaving me to question if I'd seen it at all. I hurried back to my car, the feeling of being watched creeping down my spine. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just the result of too many horror movies. But then, things started getting weirder. The app showed no record of the delivery when I tried to mark it as complete. Calls to customer service led nowhere, with confused reps insisting no such order existed. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so I did some digging. The house was supposed to be empty. According to local records, it had been abandoned for years after a series of unexplained incidents that left the last owners wanting nothing more to do with it. Yet, someone, or something, had been watching me from the window. Curiosity mixed with an undeniable sense of dread led me to visit the local library, where I pored over old newspaper clippings and property records. The house had a history, all right. Built in the late 1800s, it had seen its fair share of tragedy, including the mysterious disappearance of a family in the 1920s and several unexplained fires thereafter. The more I learned, the more I felt drawn to the place, as if it held answers to questions I hadn't even thought to ask. I went back in daylight, driven by a need to understand. The house, under the scrutiny of the sun, seemed less menacing. Yet, the air around it was still thick with an unspoken tension, a silence that felt charged. Walking up to the porch, I half expected the door to swing open, revealing the secrets hidden behind its faded facade. Instead, I found only silence. In the weeks that followed, I couldn't escape the feeling that I'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple delivery gone wrong. My nights were plagued with dreams of the house, its windows like eyes that followed me, and the face in the window that now seemed to appear everywhere, in crowds, in the mirror, just out of sight but never out of mind. The final straw came when I received another order for the same address. This time, I refused. The app glitched, showing the order one moment and gone the next, like a bad joke. I handed in my resignation the next day, deciding some things weren't worth the risk. But the story doesn't end there. The house on the outskirts of Amherst, the ghostly figure in the window, they followed me, not physically, but in the way only unresolved mysteries can. I started seeing the town in a new light, wondering what other secrets lay hidden beneath its quiet surface. I eventually left Amherst, moving to a bustling city far from any whispering trees or hauntingly silent houses. Yet, even now, when the chill of October creeps in, I find myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see that face again, a reminder of the delivery that took me to the edge of my own fears. In the sprawling suburbs of a city that prided itself on quiet streets and tight-knit communities, I found myself weaving through the night, delivering meals to those who preferred the comfort of their homes over the bustle of local eateries. Working for a popular food delivery service had its perks, not least of which was the endless array of stories I'd collect, navigating from door to door. Yet, nothing prepared me for the delivery that would etch itself into my memory, transforming an ordinary shift into a night of unrelenting dread. It was a routine order at first glance, a dinner delivery to a secluded house on the outskirts of town. The app buzzed with the address, a place I hadn't visited before, nestled deep within a rarely tread part of the suburb, where the houses stood further apart and the shadows grew longer as the sun dipped below the horizon. Driving down the narrow lane, the trees seemed to lean closer, their branches scratching against my car like fingers, eager to draw me into the darkness. The further I went, the more my unease grew, fed by the thickening fog and the complete absence of light, save for the occasional flicker from distant windows. The house in question was a stark anomaly among its neighbors. Where others boasted well-tended gardens and welcoming lights, this one sat in darkness, its yard overgrown, the silhouette of the structure barely visible against the night sky. The instructions were simple: leave the food at the door. Ring the bell thrice and leave. Do not wait. With a growing sense of trepidation, I approached, the sound of my footsteps unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. I placed the food down, my fingers trembling slightly as I rang the bell 3 times, the sound echoing eerily back at me. As I turned to leave, a chill ran down my spine. The temperature had dropped suddenly, the night air now biting with an almost malicious cold. I hurried back to my car, casting wary glances over my shoulder, half expecting to see something or someone watching from the windows. but there was only darkness and silence. Or so I thought. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I caught glimpses of shadows moving just beyond the reach of my car's headlights, shapes that seemed too deliberate in their movement to be mere tricks of the light. The feeling persisted all the way back to the city, a nagging sense of dread that clung to me, refusing to be dismissed. It was only when I arrived at my next destination, the comforting glow of streetlights and the familiar sounds of urban life around me, that I allowed myself to relax, to believe I had imagined the whole unsettling experience. But the night had one more twist in store. As I reached into the back seat to grab the next order, I froze. There, sitting beside the insulated bag, was a box I didn't recognize, one that certainly hadn't been there before. It was old, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to dance and shift in the dim light. On the lid, a simple message, "For you, for delivering beyond the veil." I never opened the box. I left it, and the job, behind that night, unable to shake the feeling of eyes upon me, of whispers in the shadows that spoke of doors best left unopened. The experience remains with me, a chilling reminder of the night I delivered to a house that wasn't just hidden by darkness, but cloaked in mysteries far older and more terrifying than any tale of haunted suburban homes. To this day, I wonder about the house, the box, and what might have happened had I stayed a moment longer, had I dared to peer into the darkness that seemed so eager to peer back into me. Some things, I've come to realize, are best left undelivered.